Welcome to Pastor's Chat today. We're looking at Psalm 95. Now remember, we said this psalm is both an invitation to come and worship, to praise, to sing glory to God, and to honor and recognize His worth, to worship. Come, let us bow down, let us worship. And we are to do it in such a way that we do it in humility, we do it with all of our heart, and we bring glory to His name. Actually, I love what someone said. What we're doing now as we worship the Lord is we're practicing for eternity. We're practicing for heaven, and we surely are. And so the first verses 1 through 7, basically are an invitation. But then we come to 7b, the last part of 7b. It's like in the middle of the verse. Today, if you will hear His voice. Now remember, we said that this psalm was probably written after the people were back from captivity. They were reestablishing themselves in Jerusalem, rebuilding the temple. And this psalm was used to encourage the people to worship. But at the same time, it's a warning. If we're not careful, we can go back where we were. You know, it is so easy to get close to the Lord, to worship Him, to enjoy His presence, and then gradually slip back into our old ways, gradually slip back into a place where we're not trusting Him anymore. You know, we do trust the Lord when things are bad. That's almost a give me. I mean, when everything goes south, things fall apart, a tragedy happens, we want the preacher, we want our friends to pray, we send out prayer requests, we humble our hearts, we beg God to help us, and that's good, that's good. But then it's sad when everything is going good and prosperity is smiling upon us and there's peace in our family and around us. That's when it gets difficult to trust the Lord and give our all to Him. We start taking the gifts for granted rather than the giver. And that's what happened with Israel. They wanted His gifts, but they often forgot the giver. And that's what we see in these last verses. And so He says, today, if you will hear His voice. Today. Now, every day is a day we need to hear His voice. Every day. Now, worship, we lift up our voices. We lift up our songs. We lift up our hearts to the Lord. But there's a time, a part of worship, that we need to listen to God. We need to hear His word. As we come together in corporate worship, that's so important in the church today, we need to hear His voice. Someone told me, as a brand new Christian, when the preacher preaches, listen as if God is speaking to you. Now, we know the preacher is not God. There's no doubt about it. But God does speak. He speaks through the preacher. He speaks through His word. He speaks to others in truth as they share that word and the experiences of God in their lives. God speaks. And we don't need to harden our hearts. We need to listen. And then He goes on to say, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion, as in the day of trial in the wilderness, when your fathers tested me. They tried me, though they saw my work. For 40 years I was grieved with that generation and said, it is a people who go astray in their hearts, and they do not know my ways. So I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Now, my rest for the people of Israel was basically the promised land, the land of Canaan, the place of victory, the place of God going before them and doing all that they needed done to inherit their land. Our place of rest, the book of Hebrews, is in Jesus Christ. And because of their unbelief, because of their disobedience, because of their hard hearts, looking at the gifts rather than the giver, they hardened their hearts and they did not enter their rest. The longest funeral march in the Bible, 40 years in the wilderness, everyone 20 years older died, did not enter their rest. Now, my friend, our rest today is in Jesus Christ, and we obey His word. We listen. Today, we hear His voice, we obey His word, and we do what He wants us to do. We follow His will, and when we do that, we have rest, we have peace in Jesus Christ, and we are, again, looking forward to that eternal rest in heaven forever. May God help us to listen to the voice of God today. Well, God bless you, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.